Well, Drew, first of all, again, thank you, and excited to hear your story. Again, a Hall of Famer, wide receiver for the Cowboys, your entire career there. But let's start at the beginning for you. You're a Jersey kid, South River, New Jersey, and you play with your buddy Joe Theismann, who says, "Hut, hut." He's one of our favorites here. He's been on our show a couple of times. He said you know what that means. But
yes,
what was it like growing up with him, playing with him as his wide receiver, and then you took over as his quarterback?
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Joey was a hero in our town before he became Joe Theismann or Theismann, okay? Because of his athletic ability, from Little League, Pop Warner, right on through to South River High School. And he was just a dominant player, whatever sport he played. And in high school, we played all three sports together, the major sports. In baseball, he was the shortstop. He was 2 years ahead of me. He was a senior when I was a sophomore, but he was a shortstop in baseball, and I played second base. And then when he graduated, I moved to shortstop. And then in basketball, we were the back court, okay? And we called him the black hole, okay? Because once we passed the ball to him, forget about it, all right? And we didn't have the three-point shot back then, but he was taking threes, way back then. And then, of course, in football, he was the quarterback and I was the receiver. And I actually backed him up at quarterback to groom to replace him eventually once he graduated. The first pass I caught in high school was a 60-yard touchdown pass. It was my sophomore year. My first high school football game at South River Denny Stadium. Bill Denny, he was a legend in South River. And for kids growing up in South River, you wanted, the boys, you wanted to play for South River High School. If you didn't, then something must have been wrong with you. But anyway, playing in Denny Stadium and then catching my first touchdown pass in the first half from Joe Theismann, and Theismann, not Theismann, okay, back then, from Joe Theismann. And it was a 60-yard touchdown pass. And I caught it standing in the end zone. And Joey was scrambling to his left when he threw the ball on the run. And I'm sitting here waiting and waiting. But that's how good he was as a high school quarterback. His senior year, my sophomore year, we were undefeated. We only played 9 games. And we were undefeated for 9 games, and we were unscored upon for 6 of those 9 games. That's how good we were. And, of course, our leader was Joe Theismann. Yes,
you eventually took over for him at the quarterback position once he graduated. Were those lofty shoes to try to fill? Because, you took that then to college. You became a quarterback in college before you transitioned to being a wide receiver again.
Yeah, I didn't want to do it. I wanted to be a receiver, okay? I didn't want to be a quarterback. I played quarterback as a freshman on the freshman team because I had a bone disease called Osgood-Schlatter's, and it prevented me from participating in any sports for a whole year. So when I finally got the okay from the doctor that I can participate, it was going into my freshman year. So I said, hey, I ain't played sports for a whole year. I want to be in the mix of this. So I signed up for quarterback and middle linebacker. Okay. And so I ended up being a quarterback and replacing Joey eventually. But I would play as a sophomore. I would play the varsity game, the whole game, offense, defense. I started at safety on defense, never came off the field. And then on Monday, I would play the JV game, the junior varsity game at quarterback to replace Joey. So I was playing 2 games a week, which is why I got this, little problem now. Too many hits.
You're paying for it years later.
I was being groomed to replace Joey, but I didn't want to do it. I wanted to be a receiver and all that. And my brother-in-law, God rest his soul, talked me into it. And it turned out to be a good conversation and a good move for me to move in at quarterback to try to replace Joey.
You're talking about moves. How do you go from New Jersey to Tulsa, where you went to go play in college? And again, you started as a quarterback, but eventually junior year, you became that wide receiver you always wanted to be.
Yeah, I was recruited heavily as a quarterback. I was all state, broke all of Joey's records and everything. My senior year, we were undefeated, 8-0-1. And so, I was really heavily recruited. And I was being recruited initially heavily by Michigan State.
Mm.
And, they had a history of black quarterbacks playing in their system. Jimmy Ray, for instance, All-American quarterback for Michigan State with Duffy Daugherty in that group. Vince Carolot had the New Jersey Territory. He was Michigan State's defensive coordinator. Even though he was the coordinator, he was recruiting me as a quarterback to go there. And in that recruiting process, he ended up getting the head coaching job at Tulsa University. So now he's recruiting me to go to Tulsa. And I didn't know where the hell it was. I thought we were going to Tulane. I told my mom, we got a call from Tulane today, but it was Tulsa. And I found out a lot about Tulsa, went down there for a few visits. But the thing that attracted me more than anything to Tulsa was their baseball program. Baseball was my favorite sport. I was 5'11", 145, 150 pounds as a senior coming out of high school. I eventually moved to center field, became an all-state center fielder, batted on damn near 500 my senior year. And Tulsa was going to College World Series. They had players being drafted into the majors. I don't know if you remember a guy from Montreal, Steve Rogers, all-star pitcher, Jerry Tabb from the Chicago Cubs, all-star first baseman. So they had a history of baseball more so than football at Tulsa University. And so that was the reason I leaned toward them as opposed to going to Michigan State, or eventually Nebraska came into the picture, and they wanted me to they were recruiting me as a quarterback. But I decided to sign with Tulsa to shock the world. Good thing we didn't have social media back then. It would have really blew up. But I decided to go to Tulsa because I felt it was the best fit for me. The university was the size of 6,000, 6,500, 7,000 undergrad. Southfield, a little small town of 15,000 people, and all that. So it seemed more conducive for me as opposed to Michigan State with 30,000 students and stuff like that. So I ended up choosing Tulsa and went there as a quarterback and started the freshman year as quarterback. And by the way, they recruited 6 quarterbacks that year. And 3 of them ended up on defense, including Steve King, who started at linebacker for the New England Patriots for a number of years. But anyway, that's how I got to Tulsa and ended up starting on the freshman team, and then had a chance to start on the varsity team going into spring trainings and all that. And the coach convinced me to give up baseball to concentrate on that. And that's when I gave up baseball and put all my marbles into the football basket, so to speak. And eventually I knew I wasn't going to be a pro quarterback. I just didn't have the skills to do that. So going into my junior year, I asked the coach, Claude Gibson, to move me to wide receiver. And he accommodated me in doing that, which, I caught 55 passes in 2 years. I was kind of lonely out there, but at least I was getting acclimated to a new position.
Yeah, outstanding career. You're in the Hall of Fame there at Tulsa. Despite that, 1973, the draft comes around. You're not drafted. You sign as an undrafted free agent with Dallas. Was that a surprise to you, or was that expected that you wouldn't be drafted?
Yeah, I was surprised. I was shocked. I was disappointed. I was hurt, because we had a few players that were drafted, in the 3rd round, Ralph McGill, Arthur Moore, so the scouts were hanging around, and I worked out with them. Then, all the seniors working out, and my best 40 time was a 4.6. What messed me up was one day, all the workouts I was doing, I wore sweatpants. One day I decided to wear shorts, and the scouts saw my skinny legs, okay? And they said, this guy is not going to be able to make it in the NFL with those legs. And I think that was my detriment. So that's back when they had 17 rounds of the NFL draft. Mm-hmm. And 452 players. I'm just saying, I didn't count. 452 players drafted that year, and no one thought Drew Pearson was good enough to waste a draft pick on. But after the end, second day of the draft, about 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, me and my wife, we're sad. I'm drinking this Boone Farm, drowning in my sorrows, and everybody's feeling sorry for me. And all that. And the phone started ringing. And the first call was the Pittsburgh Steelers. The second call was the Green Bay Packers. And the third call was the Dallas Cowboys. And what made the difference with that third call, the Cowboys scout was in town. He was at the Camelot Hotel in Tulsa on I-44, and he wanted me to come down there right away and sign a contract with the Dallas Cowboys. Of course, he's feeding all this fluff to me about, can't believe you didn't get drafted and all this. We thought you were a number 3 draft pick and all that kind of stuff. They feeding me all that. So I went down there. I was married at the time. I was married to Marcus Haynes's daughter, the Globetrotter, the dribbler. Yep. And for a wedding gift, he gave us a 1954 Ford, okay, with stick shift on the column. And it was yellow with a white top. And I was so embarrassed to drive that car. I never drove it. It just sat there in the apartment parking lot. But the only way I'd get to the Camelot Hotel was to take this car. So I bucked all the way down to the Camelot Hotel. And they finally, I got there, and Bob Griffin, God rest his soul, offered me a contract, $14,500 base salary. I said, oh, you're going to make it up in that signing bonus. That's how you pros do it. He said, yes, we got a signing bonus for you. And the problem was, after that, he went in his pocket and he took out 7 20s and a 10, and he held it up like that and said, there's your signing bonus in cash. And so I didn't hold out for $200. I needed gas money to get back to the apartment. So I ended up signing $14,500, $150 signing bonus right then and there. And was so excited about it. I didn't even realize I didn't make any money or get any money. I just knew about the opportunity to play for the Dallas Cowboys and Tom Landry.
I was going to say, and Tom Landry, what was it like the first time you had a chance to meet him and maybe get coached up by Tom Landry?
Yeah, and he was a big reason why I decided to go ahead and, sign with Dallas and all that. Because Coach Landry is the way he did things. He told us, when I came in as a rookie, as that undrafted free agent, I thought I was pretty special till I got to training camp, because there was 100 other rookies. The Cowboys were only ones using that philosophy, is to throw as much on the wall as you can and see what can stick. That was Gil Brandt's way of finding talent. And so I was one of 100 rookies in training camp. And so you had to go through that process of elimination each day. And my philosophy was live to play another day. Try to do something in training camp to catch their eye, to live to play another day. And so going through all that, and ended up coming on the other end and being able to play for Tom Landry for 11 seasons. That kind of clarifies it. Hall of Fame and Super Bowl are all cool. You see all this stuff in here. But the fact that I played 11 seasons for Tom Landry, I did it right for 11 seasons. And it would have been longer. My career got cut short by a car accident and all that. I was on the verge of signing another contract, another 3-year contract for almost $500,000, before I had that car accident. So, but being able to play for Tom Landry meant the whole difference in my career, not only on the football field, but off the field. He was my mentor. I left home at 18 years old, at Tulsa University. We had 3 losing seasons, 3 head coaches, and 3 years of probation. No mentorship whatsoever, great education there. And that was most important to me, now. But anyway, Coach Landry's mentorship, the leadership, being in that locker room around guys like Roger Staubach, Bob Lilly, Bob Hayes, Cornell Green, people like that, seeing how they did it, how they carried themselves. They not only taught me how maybe to be a good football player, if I did it right and all the things, but they taught me how to be a professional, how to go about your job to be that good football player. So that was the whole blessing. I could have signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers. They offered a lot more money. Lynn Swann would never have been heard of course. He wanted number 88. He signed a year after that. Okay. And then, of course, Green Bay, even though I knew their history, because I'm a sports guy, I'm a sports buff. My grade point average would be a lot better if they gave me tests on sports. Okay. But I'm a sports guy, so I knew all the sports and all that. But anyway, playing for Tom Landry and being around that locker room and my quarterback, Roger Staubach, later Danny White, people like that, made a difference in my life after football and mentored me into becoming the person I am today at, can you believe this, 75 years old.
A young 75, a lot of energy for your 75 years. But, what made that kid with the skinny legs and the shorts a Hall of Famer? What made you a Hall of Famer that lasted those 11 years and was so successful during those 11 years?
Well, the system that I played in, I understood it. I embraced it. Coach Landry, when he tried to develop the roster and look for players, he had Gil Brandt looking for certain players. And the certain things he was looking for in his players, number one was character. Number two was intelligence. Number three was passion. And the fourth thing was talent. If you had the first three and some talent, he could coach you up to what? Be a Hall of Famer, he could, and so there was the system, it's the organization. And if you adhere to that, if you embrace that, then you had a chance to be successful. And I worked hard. I worked hard every offseason. When I first came to Dallas, Gil Brandt hooked me up with an apartment right next door to the Dallas Cowboy practice field. And Gil Brandt, legendary Hall of Famer, God rest his soul, the apartment he hooked me up with, the balcony to that apartment overlooked the Dallas Cowboy practice field parking lot. And I found out what kind of car Roger Staubach was driving. And, sir, I would sit on that balcony. I wouldn't care how long it took till I saw Roger Staubach's car pull into that parking lot. Bam! I'd be head over there, and Roger couldn't figure out why I was always there when he was there. Now, this is the month of June and July. Back then, pro players took that kind of time off to get ready for training camp.
Sure.
Because training camp was really tough back then. Two a days for 2 weeks. And, not like it is now. It's like Club Med now. I can go through training camp now and get through it. But back then, training camp was really, rigorous. So it was tough to get through it. And so anyway, I was able to get through that. And, the rest, as they say, is history. But the mentorship, being around those right kind of people and doing it the right way. And again, I was had the character, and I knew I was intelligent coming out of Tulsa University and all that. But all these things had to be a part of the success you're going to have if you want to be part of the Dallas Cowboys. And so I was able to adhere to that and follow the course and do all the right things. My first preseason game, we're playing the Rams in the LA Coliseum. We took the bus down there. I get to the locker. My first jersey they give me is number 13. Okay. I don't play the whole game to the third quarter. All I'm doing is covering kicks and returning punts. They finally stick me out there in the third quarter to return a punt. They're punting from their end zone, the Rams, and I'm on the 50-yard line, and that ball's coming down and hit me and went right through me and into the ground, and they recovered on the 50-yard line, and I'm standing there on one knee, and I looked over the sideline, Coach Landry shaking his head. I said, this is it. This is it. But you know what? Coach Landry put me back out there. The same game, fourth quarter. They punt again. I catch the punt. I go down the left side, 59 yards to the 1 yard line. All right. That gave me another look, lived to play another day. So it was all those kind of things leading up to the opportunity that eventually came to making that Cowboy roster.
Made the roster, helped the team to get the 3 Super Bowls, win a Super Bowl. Again, you're showing me the ring there. That certainly is a moment that still sticks out in your mind as well. What was it like to win that trophy, to take the Cowboys to the highest level in the NFL?
Yeah, it was. It's a big deal. I mean, it's the Super Bowl champion. You're the man. You can talk all that noise for a whole season. But, in my 11-year career, I played in 7 championship games. I could have played in 7 Super Bowls, So getting there and winning one was a big deal, because you go through the whole season so many things you have to overcome, to get to that point. The obstacles, the negatives, the injuries, and all those kind of things you have to that has to fall in place. So when you win it all, you think about how you were able to overcome those things along the way. And each time you're able to overcome those things, it added another layer of maybe championship quality to your whole process. And eventually we got there, and we just got lucky. The Steelers decided to take the year off, The Denver Broncos come in here with Craig Morton, former Dallas Cowboy quarterback. He played with the Giants for a minute. Then he went to Denver. But we knew him as Craig Morton. And we knew Craig Morton couldn't run. His knees were like this, okay? They were bent. Instead, everybody's knees like that, okay? And so when we played Denver in that Super Bowl XII, we knew that we had to pressure Craig, stop the running game, force him to throw the football, and then collapse that pocket with Randy White and Harvey Martin, who were the co-MVPs of that Super Bowl. It could have been Randy White, Harvey Martin, and Too Tall Jones, the co-MVPs, because they brought it that game. But, winning that Super Bowl and beating the Broncos that year was a big deal for us because, it's the Super Bowl. You don't know what it's like to experience that till you experience it. And, man, you become the man, you had a whole year of that. You're the man. They patting you on your back, telling you how great you are. And all you want to do is do it again. You want to do it again. You want more of that. It makes you hungrier. It didn't make us satisfied. It didn't sate us. It made us hungrier. And we went right back to the Super Bowl the next year. We lost to the Steelers. But it took a team like the Steelers to beat us.
Yeah,
when I go to the Hall of Fame luncheon, the best part of the Hall of Fame induction is the Hall of Fame luncheon because it's just Hall of Famers there. And we all sit in our team groups. And last year at the luncheon, I tapped Tony Dorsett. I said, look at all those Steelers over there. No wonder we can't beat those guys, man. They're all Hall of Famers. Their whole defense is in the Hall of Fame, including Mr. Mel Blount, okay? Yep. Best cornerback I ever played against, by far.
Why?
So it was tough. But we understood, what the Steelers were all about, and there were the criteria. And so they took a year off. We got to be able to catch Craig Morton. Red Miller, he gonna no way Red Miller gonna beat Tom Landry, okay, on Super Bowl Sunday, and they didn't. So we ended up getting one Super Bowl, 7 championship games. So I lost, 4 of those. I ended up playing in 3 Super Bowls.
You mentioned Mel Blount. What made him hard for you to him such a good defender?
You ever see him in person? Yeah. Okay. 6'4", 205. Coach Landry couldn't believe how big he was, No, and the type of defense they play, they play what we call a 41-46. Now, 41-46 is when the cornerbacks are up, the 2 safeties cover deep. Now, in that defense, 41-46, the cornerback could either dog you and run with you, bump with you all the way field, or they can hit you and release you and let you go up on the safeties. Well, Mel Blount didn't release nobody, okay? He bumped you all the way downfield. And you couldn't get inside because he cocked inside, and his job was not to let you inside. And so, on third down situation, only time I ever caught a pass against the Steelers, whether it's regular seasons or Super Bowl, was either first or second down because they play more of a run defense and where they loosen up. Third down, my job, Tony Hill's job, or Golden Richards on the other side, was to clear it out and go underneath these 2 guys. Because if you clear it out, now you're taking a cornerback out, you're taking a safety out, and you can work underneath with Preston Pearson, Billy Joe Dupree, Butch Johnson, and some of the weapons we had to operate underneath. But Mel Blount was the man, okay? I don't give no cornerback no respect, okay? I'm the man, okay? I'm the man. Roger Worley, Hall of Famer. I'm sorry. I love you, man, but you ain't Mel Blount. Mel Blount. And I see him because, we have these events here. He's a cowboy. He comes in with his hat on, and he's already 6'4", and he's got these cowboy boots with heels like that, So he comes in intimidating and all that. But the nicest guy you ever want to meet off the field, but on the field, by far, the best cornerback I played against. I gave him props. And again, don't let this get out, okay? Because I don't give props to no cornerbacks.
We'll make sure he doesn't see this. Yeah, I know we're almost out of time here, but again, you're a big fan still, a big supporter of the Cowboys, and maybe we saw that to the nth degree, the 2017 NFL Draft in Philadelphia as well. Tell us about that moment where it's kind of gone viral, I guess, even though it was 2017, but obviously a lot of rivals that you had with the Cowboys, and you made sure those fans knew who you were and about the Cowboys back in 2017.
Yeah, that was interesting. First of all, I was honored and felt privileged that the Cowboys had selected me to make that choice because there's so many guys they could have taken, Hall of Famers, all pros, great players in Cowboy history they could have selected. So I wanted to do them right. So, I'm a media guy. I worked in TV when I got out. So on the way up there, I was going to write out what I was going to say. And I had it written out and memorized, but I didn't think I was going to deliver it like that. So when the commissioner announced next up with this second pick in the 60th round, whatever it was, Drew Pearson, boo, the place exploded. Oh, my God. And the commissioner says, before I walked out there, he says, "Are you ready for this?" I said, "Commissioner, if it wasn't for the Pittsburgh Steelers, I wouldn't have a career in the NFL." You know what he said? Say that. So I went out there and I started that like that. And as I got closer to the podium, the boos got louder. And they should have known. They should have asked Herm Edwards. The one guy you don't mess with on that field is Drew Pearson. Not because I can catch passes and run routes, because of my mouth. Okay, I talk more noise on the field than anybody, and because I have my linemen there to back me up and all that kind of stuff. So they should have known. But anyway, I just delivered it that way. And in the media, they taught you when you talk to an audience, you don't have to yell into the mic. The mic will pick you up. Okay, but I didn't take a chance on that. Okay, I was yelling into that mic, and it just came out that way. And I didn't try to do anything different or anything. I just felt the emotion of the moment. And when I walked backstage, all these Hall of Famers or presenters are now giving me a standing ovation. I get escorted out of the building, and into my hotel. The next morning, I go into the airport. I get escorted out of the hotel to the airport. Oh, it was crazy, but it was just a moment. And I was able to take advantage of. And now I am known as the draft guy. I'm doing the draft this year with
Nice.
Tony Dorsett. Okay, Tony Dorsett, University of Pittsburgh, from Pittsburgh, Hopewell High School, Aliquippa. Grew up probably wanting to be a Steeler. But anyway, they wanted Tony to be part of this year's draft. And of course, in his situation, he needed somebody to be with him. So they asked me to do it. So Tony and I are going to come up there on the second day of the draft and announce the Cowboys' second day of the draft pick. So this will be my fourth draft, okay?
Nice.
I did the one in Philly. The next year they had me do the one in Dallas. Then I did one in Cleveland. And, of course, this one coming up. So for a guy that didn't get drafted, 17 rounds of the draft, now I'm known for the draft. The NFL draft.
We'll be watching that for sure. Before I let you go, I have to ask you about the call that came for the Hall of Fame. Again, it wasn't until 2021. So you finished your career in the early 80s, and you had to wait a long time. What was that like when you finally got that call that you were going into the Hall of Fame?
It's like I couldn't believe it. I was out doing yard work. You see a brother, they thought I was the yard guy, in my neighborhood. The neighbors say, "Can you give me next?" And the phone rings. And, we got the cell phones in my pocket, and it's Rick Gosselin, the sports writer from the Dallas Morning News, had a Hall of Fame vote. He says, "Drew, when the phone rings, answer it." I said, "Well, Rick, when you call, I'm always going to answer the phone." He said, "No, when the phone ring, answer it." So it rang right after that, and it was Baker, Mr. Baker. And even though he was over the phone, you could still feel his large presence. You knew exactly who he was. And I started shaking, okay? And then he said, went through the whole spiel about, being inducted and all that, and they wanted to do it right. And so they invited me over to the Cowboy facility where Mr. Jones introduced me to Mr. Baker, and that's when they told me. And the whole process, I waited 38 years. And one time I criticized the voting process, but I only criticized the process. I didn't criticize the players going in, okay? All I said was that if they're Hall of Famers, then maybe one day I will be acknowledged as a Hall of Famer because I felt I was in the same class as them. But that's what you got to do. Like I tell Darren Woodson now, he's been going through this process and everything and got stubbed again. I said, Darren, take it. All right. But the thing is, criticize the process. Yeah, because it is a flawed process. You're dealing with humans and personalities and careers. So you can't get it right every time. But the thing that you can't do is you can't criticize the players going in. Because, again, the big thing about once you get in the induction ceremony, the weekend of that is the Hall of Fame luncheon. When you're around all the Hall of Famers, you don't want to go in that room where you just criticize somebody for being a Hall of Famer. Now you're one, okay? So anyway, you don't criticize the players going in, but you definitely have a voice in the process. And I think part of the process needs to include Hall of Famers votes in the process. I can't understand why we don't have a vote. There's no one going to protect that hall more so than the Hall of Famers that are in there. And if you count on sports writers that watch this play and their vote, deciding whether we get in or not, then we should have a vote. And you want to make it more transparent, have the players have a vote. Yeah. All right? Jim Porter, I hope you're listening. Okay? That's my spiel there for the Hall of Fame. And they hear it every time I'm up there. Okay? I let them know how I feel about the process because I went through it in a certain way than a lot of guys that are Hall of Famers didn't have to deal with. So anyway, if we could give some of these votes to the players, and the players would appreciate that and feel even more respected if their opinion of who goes into their Hall of Fame, their fraternity. And that opinion should be respected and asked on a yearly basis and let us fill out forms, who we think should be there enshrined with us.
Yeah, there could be some changes after this year, especially. Well, you're forever a Super Bowl champion, forever a Hall of Famer. Drew, I can't thank you enough for spending a little time with us here today. Is there a way for people to follow you? Are you on social media and other platforms that people can follow you other than the draft coming up?
I don't know. I'm 75. I'm learning how to text, okay? Text me. I might answer it.
Well, there you go. Well, Drew, this has been a lot of fun, again, to hear your story. And again, congratulations. It came late being in the Hall of Fame, but again, forever a Hall of Famer. And congratulations on that. And enjoy the draft in a couple of weeks.
I will. Thanks for having me, man. I enjoyed the conversation, man.
All right. God thank you, Drew.
Go Cowboys. Bam.
So great to have another Pro Football Hall of Fame member, Drew Pearson, joining us here today. Our thanks to Jaden Ferguson with LST Companies for helping arrange that sit-down today. As always, we thank you for watching and for listening and invite you to like, to subscribe, and to share our shows. More great guests come your way very soon. For J.R. Quitman, our creator, producer, and director behind the scenes, I'm Mike Vaccaro. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Another episode of In the Front Row. Have a great day, everybody.